You want to get rich fast. Admit it. Stop performing patience you don't actually feel. You scroll past another video promising the shortcut, the hidden trick, the one thing nobody's telling you. You click, you watch, you feel a spark of hope for 4 minutes. Then the video ends and nothing in your life has changed. Not your bank account, not your habits, not your position. Here's the sentence that's going to bother you for the rest of this video. The fast way to get rich is the exact reason you're still broke. Not because speed is evil. Speed isn't the problem. The chase is. Every time you search for the fastest path, you quietly abandon the path you were already walking. You restart. You pivot. You chase a new angle, a new platform, a new opportunity that promises to skip the boring part. And each restart costs you something you can never get back. Time. Machiavelli never promised his prince a shortcut to power. He promised something colder. He promised that fortune rewards preparation, not urgency. The prince who moves too fast, who grabs at power before he's built a foundation to hold it, loses it just as fast as he gained it. The same law governs money. The same law is currently governing you. Picture a man standing at the base of a mountain, staring up, convinced there must be an elevator somewhere. He walks a perimeter for years, searching for the entrance to a shortcut that was never built. Meanwhile, a few hundred feet away, someone with far less talent started climbing the moment he arrived. He never found an elevator either. He simply stopped looking for one. Think about how this actually feels from the inside, not just from a distance. You start something new. The first month feels electric. You tell people about it. You imagine the version of your life where this one finally works. Then month 2 arrives, quieter than you expected. Month 3 feels almost identical to month 2. And somewhere around month 4, a new idea crosses your feed, louder and shinier than the thing you're currently doing. And it starts to feel like the smarter move. That feeling isn't insight, it's a pattern. And you've likely lived it more than once already. So sit with this uncomfortable question for a second. How many fast ways have you already tried? And where are you right now because of them? Before we go further, understand this isn't a lecture about giving up on speed entirely. It's a lecture about a very specific kind of speed, the kind that actually compounds instead of resetting to 0 every few months. Stay with me. This gets uncomfortable before it gets useful. Let's start with what the fast way actually looks like in practice, because most people have never named it out loud. The fast way looks like jumping from crypto to dropshipping to affiliate marketing to real estate wholesaling in 18 months. It looks like buying 5 courses and finishing none of them. It looks like quitting a skill the moment it stops feeling exciting, because excitement was the only fuel you had. None of these things are wrong on their own. Crypto isn't a scam. Dropshipping isn't fake. Real estate isn't a trap. The problem was never the vehicle. The problem is the driver who keeps switching cars in the middle of the race, convinced the next one will finally cross the finish line, without him having to learn how to drive. Here's the mechanism nobody explains clearly. Every skill, every business, every asset class is what I'll call an invisible runway, a period where you put in effort and see almost nothing back. Not because the strategy is broken, because compounding hasn't kicked in yet. Most people quit during the runway. They mistake silence for failure. They think, if this were going to work, I'd already see results. So they jump to something new, and the new thing has its own runway, and they quit that one too. 10 years pass. They've tried 12 things. They've mastered 0. Machiavelli warned about men who confuse motion with progress. He watched rulers scramble from alliance to alliance, always reacting, never building anything that could survive them. He called this a kind of weakness disguised as ambition. It looks like hustle. It behaves like drift. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. The people you're envying right now, the ones who look like they got rich overnight, didn't get rich overnight. They got rich on year 7 of something you only saw in year 1. You watched the visible part. You missed the runway. Think about how this looks from the outside versus the inside. From the outside, a successful business owner appears on a stage one day, describing a 6-figure breakthrough, and the crowd assumes it happened in a single leap. From the inside, that breakthrough sat on top of 4 years of unremarkable, undocumented, invisible effort. Nobody filmed those 4 years. Nobody wanted to. Silence doesn't get views. But silence is exactly where the actual work happened. There's a reason this pattern repeats across almost every industry. Attention rewards a visible moment, never the invisible years that produced it. A song reaches the top of the chart in a single week, but the songwriter behind it may have written 300 songs nobody heard first. A founder gets profiled in a magazine after one big year, but the business behind that profile survived four quiet ones before it. The public only ever sees the tip. The chaser mistakes the tip for the whole iceberg, and then wonders why copying the visible part never produces the same result. If this idea is already shifting something in how you see your own last few years, don't just let the feeling pass. Drop a comment right now with one word. Which restart hit closest to home? Crypto, business, fitness, relationships. Just one word. Because naming it is the first step out of the pattern. And I want to see how many of you are standing exactly where I used to stand. Now let's break down exactly why speed betrays you and what actually replaces it. Lesson 1. Speed feels like progress. Speed and progress feel identical from the inside. Both come with adrenaline. Both come with a sense of momentum. But they are not the same thing, and confusing them is the single most expensive mistake in wealth building. Progress is directional. It moves you closer to a specific outcome, even if slowly. Speed is just velocity. It can move you in circles just as easily as it moves you forward. A man sprinting on a treadmill is moving fast. He is also going nowhere. Think about the last time you felt genuinely excited about a new opportunity. The excitement itself felt like proof you were onto something. But excitement is not evidence. Excitement is just a chemical response to novelty. Your brain rewards new information the same way it rewards food or attention, regardless of whether that information leads anywhere useful. This is why the search for the fastest way keeps producing the same result. Not because you're lazy, because you're addicted to the feeling of starting, not the discipline of continuing. Starting is easy. Continuing after the excitement fades is where actual wealth gets built, and almost nobody talks about that part because it doesn't make an exciting video. Consider a simple test. Ask anyone chasing a fast opportunity one question. Not what's a potential upside, but what does month 14 of this look like when it's boring? Most people can't answer. They've never imagined getting past the exciting part, because the exciting part was the entire appeal. The moment boredom arrives, they assume they picked wrong, when boredom was always going to arrive no matter what they picked. Machiavelli understood that appearances deceive faster than almost anything else. A ruler who looks strong could be hollow underneath. A ruler who looks slow and cautious could be building something unstoppable. Speed is a costume. Direction is the body underneath it. Lesson 2. Every shortcut has a toll you pay later. Here's a principle worth carving into memory. Nothing in wealth building is actually free. When something looks like a shortcut, the cost hasn't disappeared. It's been deferred. Picture someone who skips learning the fundamentals of a business and jumps straight to buying ads, hoping to force results before understanding the product, the customer, or the offer. For a moment, it might work. Then the ad account gets flagged, or the offer doesn't convert, or the customer churns immediately because the foundation was never built. The bill arrives. It's just late. Picture someone who takes on a fast money opportunity that requires no skill and no patience. Usually this means someone else has already extracted the value and is selling you the leftovers. The fastest opportunities are, almost without exception, the ones already picked over by people who move slower and earlier. This is not a coincidence. It's structural. Anything that could make you rich instantly, with no skill and no waiting, would already be flooded with competition. Because everyone wants instant results. The absence of a queue is information. If nobody's waiting in line for it, ask yourself why. There's an old pattern that repeats in every gold rush the world has ever seen. The men who got rich fastest weren't the ones panning for gold in the river. They were the ones selling shovels, tents, and boots to the men who believed the fast fortune was still available. The fast opportunity everyone was chasing had already been claimed by the time they arrived. The slower, less glamorous business of equipping the rush was where the real money quietly accumulated, unnoticed for years. Machiavelli wrote that fortune favors the bold, but he never meant reckless. He meant the prepared man who moves the instant rail opportunity appears. because he already built the skill to recognize it. Boldness without preparation is encouraged. It's gambling wearing a nicer outfit. Ask yourself a practical question the next time an opportunity claims to be fast. Who exactly is getting paid if I move quickly here? Sometimes the honest answer is you. Often the honest answer is a person selling you the course, the platform collecting the fees, or the seller offloading an asset before its true condition becomes obvious. Speed sold to you by someone else usually benefits them first, and you only by accident. Lesson 3. The runway is not a sign you're failing. Every worthwhile skill or asset has a period where effort produces almost nothing visible. This is the runway, and how you behave during it determines your entire financial future. During the runway, you're not failing. You're accumulating. Reputation accumulates before it pays. Skill accumulates before it monetizes. An audience accumulates before it converts. A network accumulates before it opens doors. None of this shows up on a bank statement in month 1. It shows up eventually, all at once, in a way that looks sudden to everyone watching from the outside. Here's a thought experiment. Imagine 2 versions of yourself standing at the exact same starting line. Same skill, same resources, same city. One version treats the first 6 months of silence as proof the strategy is broken and quits. The other version treats the same 6 months as expected, unremarkable, and simply the price of admission. Nothing separates these 2 people except how they interpreted an identical period of nothing happening. This is the actual difference between people who eventually get rich and the people who spend a decade circling the entrance without ever walking through it. It was never intelligence. It was tolerance for invisible progress. Think about the runway the way a pilot thinks about it. A plane sitting at the start of the runway looks identical to a plane that will never leave the ground. Full speed, engines roaring, wheels turning, and from a distance, nothing appears to be happening yet. The lift doesn't arrive because the plane picked the wrong runway. It arrives because the plane stayed on the runway long enough to reach the speed where lift becomes possible. Most people leave the runway on foot halfway through, convinced the plane was broken, right before the point where it would have taken off. Machiavelli studied history obsessively because history revealed the same pattern over and over. Empires that lasted were built slowly, brick by brick, treaty by treaty. Empires built through rapid conquest without a foundation collapsed within a generation. Speed built the empire. Patience kept it standing. Consider what it actually looks like to sit through a runway without quitting. It looks like showing up on a Tuesday with no new result to report, doing the same unremarkable task you did last Tuesday, with no applause and no proof yet that any of it matters. It looks unremarkable precisely because it is. The runway was never designed to feel rewarding while you're on it. It was only ever designed to eventually end. Lesson 4. Restarting is the most expensive habit you own. Let's do the math nobody wants to do. If a skill takes roughly 2 years of consistent effort to start compounding, and you restart every 8 months chasing something new, you will never once reach the compounding phase of anything. Ever. Not because you lack talent, because you keep resetting the clock before it finishes counting. This is the quiet tragedy behind most unfinished ambitions. It's not that people don't work hard. Many of them work incredibly hard in short, intense bursts for 6 or 7 months at a time. Then doubt creeps in, or a shinier opportunity appears, or a friend mentions a new platform that's supposedly easier, and the clock resets again. Picture a young man who spent 3 years jumping between 5 different online business models. Each time, he got close to 18 months in, the exact point where consistent effort typically starts paying off, and each time something pulled him away right before payoff arrived. A new opportunity always looked more promising than the current grind. By year 3, he had 5 sets of foundational skills and 0 results from any of them. Meanwhile, someone who picked one lane and stayed miserable in it for 18 months straight had already passed him by. Now, picture the same young man 5 years later, finally forced by circumstance to commit to one path because every other option had dried up. Within 2 years of that forced commitment, he built more traction than he'd built in the entire previous decade combined. Nothing about his talent changed. What changed was a removal of his own ability to escape into a new restart. Sometimes the fastest way forward is simply losing the option to quit. The tragedy wasn't a lack of effort. It was a total lack of continuity. Restarting doesn't just cost you time, it costs you the compounding that only happens after time. There's a simple exercise worth doing right now before the excitement of this video fades. Count how many distinct directions you've genuinely attempted over the last 3 years. Not distractions, real attempts with real effort behind them. If that number is higher than 2, you already know, without needing anyone to explain it further, exactly why the results haven't arrived yet. Lesson 5. Boring is the actual fast lane. Here's the reversal that changes everything once you actually accept it. The boring path is the fast path, not metaphorically, literally, mathematically faster, because it's the only path that doesn't keep resetting to 0. The exciting path looks fast because it's loud. New platform, new hustle, new opportunity, constant motion, constant content, constant noise. But loud isn't the same as fast. Loud is often just distraction dressed up as ambition. The boring path looks slow because it doesn't need noise to justify itself. Someone who picks one skill, one business, one asset class and commits to it for years looks, from the outside, like they're not doing much. No new launches every month. No dramatic pivots. Just steady, repeated, unglamorous effort applied to the same target for a long time. But steady effort compounds. Compounding is the only force in finance or skill building that behaves like magic while actually being pure arithmetic. It requires exactly one input that the fast chaser never provides: time left undisturbed. Think about interest on a savings account. In year 1, the growth looks laughably small, almost insulting compared to the effort of saving. But the account doesn't care about your impatience. It keeps applying the same modest rate, quietly, year after year. And by year 20, the number looks almost fictional compared to year 1. Nothing changed about the mechanism. Only the amount of time it was left alone changed. Skill compounds the same way. Reputation compounds the same way. Every fast chaser withdraws before the 20th year ever arrives. Machiavelli respected the ruler, who could tolerate boredom in service of a longer plan far more than the ruler, who needed constant drama to feel powerful. Quiet consistency was, to him, a form of strength most men never developed, because most men couldn't sit still long enough to prove it. Lesson 6. Systems don't need you to hurry. Once you stop chasing speed, a different question replaces it. Not, how do I get there faster, but what can I build that keeps working whether I hurry or not? This is a shift from labor to leverage, and it's the actual mechanism behind every fortune that wasn't inherited. A job pays you exactly for the hours you personally show up. A system, whether it's a business, an asset, or a piece of intellectual property, keeps producing value even on the days you do nothing at all. The reason speed obsesses people is that they're still thinking in terms of labor. Faster labor means faster pay. But leverage doesn't reward speed. It rewards existence. A rental property doesn't care if you check on it once a week or once a year. It still collects rent. A well-built business doesn't care if the founder takes a vacation. The systems inside it keep functioning. This is why chasing speed and building leverage are almost opposite mindsets. Speed asks, how fast can I extract value right now? Leverage asks, what can I construct once that keeps producing value without me hurrying at all? One mindset burns you out chasing an endless string of urgent wins. The other mindset builds something that eventually outruns your own effort entirely. Picture a craftsman who spends a full year building a single tool, refining it, testing it, improving it, with nothing to show for that year except the tool itself. To an outsider chasing speed, that year looks wasted. No income, no visible output, just quiet construction. But once the tool is finished, it produces results for the next 15 years without needing to be rebuilt. The craftsman who spent that first slow year now moves faster than everyone still trying to build the same result by hand, one exhausting attempt at a time. This is why the wealthiest people you'll ever study rarely describe their biggest win as their fastest one. They describe it as the one they built patiently enough to survive contact with reality. A system built in a hurry tends to break the first time conditions change. A system built slowly, tested against real friction along the way, tends to keep functioning long after the builder has stopped paying close attention to it. Lesson 7. Urgency destroys judgment. There's a psychological cost to constantly chasing speed that goes beyond wasted time. Urgency actively damages your ability to make good decisions. When you feel behind, every decision gets filtered through desperation instead of strategy. You take the deal that looks fastest instead of the deal that's actually sound. You trust the person promising quick results instead of the person promising a realistic timeline. You skip the research because research feels like it's slowing you down, when research is often the exact thing standing between you and a costly mistake. Machiavelli warned that fear and urgency make men easy to manipulate. A calm man asks hard questions before committing. A desperate man just wants the pain of uncertainty to end, and predators specifically target that desperation, because desperate people ignore red flags they normally catch in an instant. This is precisely why so many fast money schemes target people who feel behind on wealth. Not because those people are naive, because urgency temporarily disables the part of the brain responsible for careful evaluation. The chase for speed doesn't just waste your time. It makes you an easier target while you're wasting it. Notice how this plays out in ordinary decisions, not just dramatic scams. Someone who feels behind takes a job offer without negotiating, because negotiating feels like it might slow the process down. Someone who feels behind invests in an asset without checking basic numbers, because checking feels like hesitation. Each of these small decisions, made under manufactured urgency, quietly compounds into a worse financial position than patience would have produced. Calm decisions are rarely dramatic. They're just correct, consistently, over a long enough period to matter. Lesson 8. What you pass down is a habit, not just a number. There's a layer to this most people never reach, because most people never sit still long enough to notice it. Consider what actually gets inherited, in a practical sense, by someone who spent a decade chasing speed, compared to someone who spent a decade compounding one direction. The chaser passes down a story, a collection of near misses, a drawer full of half-finished courses and abandoned side projects. There's often real talent in that drawer. What's missing is a completed loop, a single project carried from start to a stable, working result. The builder passes down a mechanism, not just money, though there's usually money too, a working method for choosing a direction and staying with it until it pays, a demonstrated tolerance for the runway, a track record of resisting the next shiny distraction long enough to let the first thing finish compounding. Give someone money without the mechanism behind it, and it tends to evaporate quickly, a pattern so common across families that it barely needs explaining anymore. Give someone the mechanism, even without the money, and they tend to rebuild a version of the same result, because the actual asset was never the number. It was the discipline that produced the number. Machiavelli understood that a prince obsessed only with the treasure currently in his vault would eventually lose it, while a prince who built durable systems and habits of governance created something that survived impersonally. Wealth behaves the same way, quietly, inside ordinary decisions about which project to finish and which distraction to ignore. Lesson 9. The only speed that actually compounds. None of this means move slowly for its own sake. Slowness isn't a virtue either. The goal was never to glorify patience as suffering. The goal is to redirect your urgency toward the one thing that actually rewards it. Consistency applied to a single direction, without interruption, for long enough that compounding finally activates. This is a real fast way. Not fast in the sense of instant. Fast in the sense of never wasting a single month restarting something you'd already begun. A person who picks one skill and stays with it for 3 uninterrupted years will, almost without exception, outperform a person who tried 10 different things across the exact same 3 years. Not because the first person worked harder in any given month, because the first person's effort was allowed to stack, while the second person's effort kept collapsing back to zero every time they switched lanes. Picture the difference on paper. 10 attempts of 4 months each add up to the same total time as 1 attempt of 3 years and 4 months. But the math of skill and reputation doesn't add. It multiplies against time spent uninterrupted. 10 short, disconnected attempts produce 10 beginner-level results. 1 long, connected attempt produces something closer to mastery, and mastery is what the market actually pays for. Machiavelli believed that a prince's greatest strength was consistency of purpose, not raw ambition. Ambition without direction produced chaos. Ambition aimed at a single, Sustained objective produced empires. The same law governs a bank account. Ambition scattered across 5 pursuits produces 5 half-finished attempts. Ambition aimed at one target, sustained past the point of boredom, produces an outcome the scattered version never reaches. There's a version of speed worth wanting, and it has nothing to do with how quickly you switch directions. It has everything to do with how quickly you can eliminate every distraction that isn't your chosen direction. That kind of speed, the speed of focus rather than motion, is the only kind that ever survives contact with calendar 3 years long. Lesson 10. Choosing the direction you'll actually finish. There's one practical question left, and it matters more than which specific opportunity you eventually choose. How do you pick a direction you'll actually stay with long enough for any of this to work? The answer isn't follow your passion, because passion fades the moment the runway gets boring, and it will get boring. The better question is narrower and less romantic. What can you tolerate doing on a bad day with no applause for at least 2 years, even if nobody's watching? That question filters out almost everything exciting and leaves you with something closer to the truth about your own endurance. This is uncomfortable because it removes the fantasy that the right opportunity will somehow make patience unnecessary. It won't. Every direction requires the same currency eventually. Time, applied without interruption, long enough for compounding to take over. The only real choice is which direction you're willing to pay that price for. Machiavelli never asked his prince to love the work of governing. He asked whether the prince could endure it consistently, because endurance, not enthusiasm, was what separated a lasting rule from a brief one. The same test applies to you right now. Quietly, in whichever direction you're about to choose after this video ends. You don't need certainty that the direction is perfect. Perfect doesn't exist at the starting line of anything. You need enough tolerance for the boring middle that you're still standing there in year 3, long after everyone chasing something faster has already moved on to their next restart. Lesson 11. Comparison is a clock you didn't agree to. Part of what drives a chase for speed is comparison, and comparison operates on a clock you never actually agreed to run on. You see someone your age with more money, more visibility, more apparent success, and a silent countdown starts in your head. You should already be there. You're behind. Hurry. But that countdown was never based on real information. You don't know what runway that person walked before you noticed them. You don't know how many quiet, undocumented years came before the visible result. You're comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 9, and the comparison manufactures an urgency that has nothing to do with your actual timeline. Picture someone who spends their 20s comparing their progress to peers who inherited resources, connections, or a head start they never mentioned publicly. Every comparison feels like proof of falling behind. None of it accounts for the different starting line each person actually stood on. The chase for speed is often just comparison wearing a financial costume, and comparison rarely produces good decisions because it's optimizing for how you look against someone else instead of what actually compounds for you. Machiavelli warned that a ruler who measured himself only against his neighbors, rather than against his own long-term position, would make decisions driven by appearance rather than strength. The same trap catches ordinary people constantly, chasing speed to catch up to someone else's visible chapter 9, while you're still living your own chapter 1. Guarantees exhaustion without guaranteeing anything close to their result. Lesson 12. The discipline of doing nothing new. There's a specific discipline almost nobody names directly, and it might be the most valuable one in this entire video. The discipline of doing nothing new, not laziness. The deliberate refusal to start a fresh project while an existing one is still mid-runway. This sounds almost too simple to matter, yet it's exactly what separates people who eventually break through from people who stay permanently mid-runway on everything they've ever attempted. Every time a new opportunity crosses your feed, a decision point appears, quiet and easy to miss. Do you investigate it, half commit to it, and quietly dilute the attention going toward what you already started? Or do you let it pass unexplored because your current direction hasn't finished proving itself yet? Picture keeping a single, ongoing list of every next big idea that tempted you over the last 2 years, without acting on any of them. Simply letting the current direction run its course first. Most people who actually try this exercise are stunned by how long that list becomes, and equally stunned by how much further along their original direction would already be if none of those temptations had pulled at their attention. Machiavelli respected restraint far more than most historians give him credit for. A prince who could sit on opportunity, waiting for the correct moment rather than the exciting one, demonstrated more strength than a prince who reacted to every glittering possibility the moment appeared. The discipline of doing nothing new is not the absence of ambition. It's ambition finally aimed at one target long enough to actually hit it. Lesson 13. The interest you owe on every restart. There's one final cost worth naming directly, because it's the one most people never calculate at all. Every restart doesn't just erase the progress you'd already made. It charges interest on top of the erasure in the form of confidence. The first time you abandon a direction 18 months in, it feels like a strategic pivot. The 5th time it happens, something quieter starts to shift underneath the decision. A belief begins to form that nothing you commit to actually works, that you're simply someone who doesn't follow through, that the pattern is personal rather than circumstantial. This belief is rarely spoken out loud, but it shapes every future attempt. You start a new project half expecting them to end the same way, and that expectation becomes part of why they do. Picture 2 people at the exact same point, 5 restarts deep into their financial journey. One of them interprets the pattern honestly. I kept switching before compounding had a chance to begin. The other interprets it personally. I'm simply not built for this. The first interpretation leads to a 6th attempt, carried out differently, with the runway finally respected. The second interpretation leads to giving up on the entire pursuit of wealth altogether, convinced the problem was identity rather than strategy. Machiavelli understood that a prince who lost confidence in his own capacity to rule became far easier to overthrow than one who simply lost a battle. Confidence, once damaged by repeated abandoned attempts, becomes the actual barrier long after the original strategic mistake has been corrected. This is the real interest owed on every restart. Not just lost time, but a quietly accumulating doubt that makes the next attempt harder to fully commit to than the last one was. So here's where this leaves you. You wanted a fast way. You probably already tried a version of it, more than once. And if you're honest with yourself right now, you already know the pattern. The chase felt like progress. It wasn't. It was a series of restarts, each one erasing the momentum the last one almost built. The actual fast way was never a secret formula hidden from you. It was something far less exciting and far more effective. Pick one direction. Endure the runway without mistaking silence for failure. Let effort stack instead of restarting the count every time boredom or doubt shows up. That's the entire mechanism behind almost every fortune that wasn't inherited, and was available to you the entire time you were searching for something faster. You don't need a new opportunity. You need to stop abandoning the one you already started. That single shift, more than any platform, any strategy, any secret, is what actually separates the people who eventually get rich from the people who spend their whole lives one restart away from it. Think about where you'll be standing in 5 years if you finally stop switching lanes today. Not a fantasy version of 5 years from now. A realistic one, built on the same discipline you're capable of right now, applied without interruption. That version of you already exists somewhere ahead of you, waiting on the other side of a runway you haven't finished walking yet. None of this requires a bigger idea than the one you already have sitting half-finished somewhere. It requires you to stop treating that idea as disposable the moment it stops feeling exciting. The market has never paid people for how many things they started. It pays people for what they were still standing next to years after everyone else had already walked away. If this video shifted the way you see speed and money, don't just scroll past it, like this video. Drop a comment telling me which strategy hit you the hardest, and subscribe, because every video on this channel is built to sharpen your mind and separate you from a crowd that stays comfortable. No fluff, no noise, just doctrine. Most people don't lose this game. They just never played it.